Doctor just asked me if I knew I was pregnant in front of my religious mother. If you don't want to truly answer a doctor, then tell your mom to leave next time. These questions are supposed to ensure your safety. If you are pregnant, you can't get X-ray, for example, and to help diagnose you. You needed to actually speak up and demand privacy. Letting your mother stay indicated to the doctor that she was allowed to hear diagnoses. But that ship has sailed, and you have to focus on yourself. More importantly, it sounds like you may have an ectopic pregnancy, and that would need immediate surgery. What did the doctor say about your condition? TBH, those questions are standard question. They are trying to figure out and rule out the cause of your stomachy pain. You also get asked before things like X-ray, so it could happen when you are being treated at dentist, broken bones, etc. It will happen many times in the future. You didn't want your mother to not hear what the doctor say. You could have asked for privacy. Actually, if your mom has seen the doctor before, she should know those are standard question. If you gave consent for your mom to be privy to your medical information, then yes, they are allowed to do that. I know you're going through a hard time right now. But I want you to understand something. If you choose to take someone with you to medical appointments, the staff will assume you're okay with that person hearing information here and there. If you don't trust a person, don't take them with you to a place where you're vulnerable. People can't read your mind. Yeah, he was allowed to do that. You had your mom answering questions for you. You had your mom in the exam room. She didn't force her way in. TBF, she was answering all the other questions for you, and you're not a 16-year-old, you're 20. I can see why he'd assume you'd be fine with it. If you weren't comfortable answering the first questions in front of her, you should have said something. The doctor's not a mind reader, and if you're in the ER, he has other things to do than dance around your relationship with your mom. If you're in the hospital, the doctors and nurses are going to ask you personal questions because it's relevant. If you don't want them to do so in front of your mom, then ask her to leave, like you should have when you were uncomfortable in the first place. So question, are you saying you tested positive for pregnancy and they're asking if you knew? Or were they asking if to your knowledge you are pregnant? Because you mention them asking if you're sexually active after asking if you knew. It seems like a nearly pointless question to ask if they already knew you were pregnant. So basically you play little kid with their mommy when you feel like it, then minutes later expect to be treated as an independent adult. It doesn't work like that. You're 20 and are afraid your parents will find out you're sexually active is the real issue. You're an adult, don't bring mommy to your appointment if you want confidentiality. And yes, it allowed as you gave consent by having her there. Doctors are there to diagnose and treat you, not deal with your family drama. You invited her into the room and it's a standard question, especially for abdominal pain. He did his job. I'm sorry it made you uncomfortable and that your mother is an overbearingly religious, but he did nothing wrong. Sorry, but you should have called anyone else to take you to the hospital. If you're sexually active, you should know there's a chance of you being pregnant. Almost any time a woman goes to the ER, they're going to run a pregnancy test. Allowing your mom in the room, and allowing her to answer your questions implies that you're fine with her knowing your diagnosis. What did you expect? Even if you kicked her out of the room, what were you going to tell her when she undoubtedly drilled you about the diagnosis? You're an adult. You can't pretend to be mommy's special pious princess forever. Well, you had your mom there, meaning you gave consent for her to be there. There is no legal or HIPAA violation here. If you're over about 16, they're gonna ask if you're sexually active. My kid switched doctors when he moved out and I was required to be at the first appointment because he was underage. They asked him. He was uncomfortable, but I looked at him and said, "You've been together a year, I'd be surprised if you hadn't," and he said yes, and they moved on to the next question. Allowing your mom in there is implied consent. You're 20. Your mom doesn't need to be in the room with you next time. That is standard questioning. They ask that at nearly every appointment. Sorry, you can't make mommy take you to the doctor and allow her into the consultation and then complain she heard the discussion. If you want to adult, you need to be more independent. You had every opportunity to request that your mother not be present in the room and she would have had to leave. In your own words, they started asking me questions in front of her and that made me uncomfortable. You were clearly aware that you in the moment did not want her present, and instead of making that known you actually just refused to answer any questions for medical personnel in general. They can't read your mind, Speak up. I'm sorry, but the doctor didn't really do anything wrong. If you wanted privacy, you need to advocate for yourself. Hey mom, can you wait in the waiting room while I talk to the doctor? I'm sorry, but this is unfortunately just something you gotta learn from. It sucks and I'm sorry this happened to you. The doctor had no way to know your mom was an unhinged cultist. To be blunt, it's because you were letting your mother speak for you and not answering questions yourself. If you had not been using her as your representative, it probably wouldn't have happened. If you had been more involved and the one asking and answering questions, the doctor more likely would have asked to speak to you privately. But, it seems like he couldn't directly communicate with you at all in your state. Medical staff did nothing wrong. If you don't want your mom hearing answering questions, as an adult, state it. The staff also said nothing about you. They only asked if or do you know. This does not presume you had sex or are pregnant. Any judgment is on mom. That one is on you. You should have told your mother to leave. You're 20, you can answer the questions by yourself in full confidentiality. Don't play the victim. You are an adult and decided to bring your mother into the room with you. So are you pregnant or not? Because if you are not, then your mom can't prove you had premarital sex. If you are, you need medical attention, and mom probably wants a healthy daughter over a dead one, so take care of yourself. TBH, I don't think they did anything wrong. You brought your mother in and never asked her to leave. You're an adult and have the power to control who is in the room. You should have taken advantage of that if you didn't want your mother to know your sexual history, which is a common line of questioning at the hospital. If you can't be honest in front of your mom, don't bring her or ask her to step out. That being said, I'm so sorry you're struggling with this. I'm from a very religious family and I know this would have been a nightmare. No matter what you decide, do what's best for you. If you bring someone in with you, then you are giving them permission to be there. The doctor couldn't call them in and do that, or go out in the waiting room and do that, but since you brought her in with you, he is currently working on the assumption that you are consenting to her presence. So if you want privacy, you need to ask her to leave or not bring her with you. For future reference, those are standard questions, so maybe ask her to go get you some water or whatever before they start getting your history next time. You're an adult, and if you didn't want your mom to know your medical history, then you should not have allowed her to answer those questions or be in the room. If you aren't doing any of the talking, then the staff is going off of the assumption that you want your mom to answer for you and know what's going on. I mean, the situation is all on you for allowing her to be there. If you don't want her to know things, tell her to wait in the waiting room and answer the questions for yourself like an adult. Especially if you're doing things you don't want her to know about, like having premarital sex, regardless of religious stance. If you want to try to fix things, you need to openly communicate and have that conversation with your mom, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. It's totally okay for you to ask your mom to leave the room during the questions portion. IDK, why you need your mommy there when you're 20 years old? You don't get to complain when you're the one who asked her to be there. You didn't even speak for yourself and let her answer all the questions. Grow up. As a woman, if you have stomach pain, those are the standard questions. Even if you had a uterine ablation, they still ask if you could be pregnant. Even on birth control. We get to pee in a cup and all that fun stuff. Next time, just get a ride or have your mom wait in the waiting area if you are uncomfortable with answering questions in front of her.